Hello, everyone, and welcome to Black Revolutionary Theater Workshop's May Melanated Monday. My name is Bianca, and I will be your MC for today. For this month's show, we have three insightful plays by BRTW's community members and a special community conversation. Before we jump into programming, I want to take some time to tell you who we are and what we're doing this month, starting with our mission statement. BRTW exists to disrupt any and all oppressive systems that marginalize Black people using narrative and performance as a methodology to recenter Black people and experiences. With economic, social, educational, healthcare, housing, and political injustices facing our community, BRTW aims to tackle the issues that impact us while becoming a beacon for Black opportunity within the arts. Melanated Mondays are a monthly writing and performance salon highlighting a different theme at the intersection of Black justice and civic engagement. This month's theme is Black mental health. This Melanated Monday centralizes the mental health of Black people from a relationship with therapy to discussions of mental health issues. In today's program, we hope to destigmatize mental health issues in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. Please know that there is a major trigger warning for discussions of self-harm and mental illness in the show. And as always, please take care of yourselves. With that, we're going to get started with our first piece, which is Seeing Red by Cyril Manfo. Jonas will be played by Cyril, Monica will be played by Ev, Curtis will be played by Cede, and stage directions will be read by Tim. Trigger warnings include depictions of police brutality and death, racial slurs, and racism.
Seeing red. The screen clears to show Jonas, a young Black boy, sitting in front of it, as if recording a vlog.
It's like there's a monster underneath my bed. And yeah, I know that's kid stuff, but maybe there's a reason kids are so messed up. I mean, think about it. Kids are so mean to kids and adults and male men. And then those kids grow into teens and start talking shit on the internet, and they make you feel so alone and like you're never going to matter. And then they grow into adults who deny you loans and break up families and chase you down and kill you in the street. And I mean, it's not like they just licked that off the ground. So there's got to be some sort of explanation, you know? Like, maybe I'm not a bad person. Maybe they aren't either. Maybe the world isn't stacked with villains and bad apples, just people with bad ideas in our heads.
Title screen.
They're all bad people. From Uncle Cletus to little Tommy playing in the square. Every last one of them. That's what my mama told me, and what I have to keep telling myself. It's a safety issue. As soon as you trust one, you're giving up control of your life. Your life. That shit's important. Like, you only get one. It's like they get off on destroying your one chance, your one life. I remember I had a friend who dated this white boy, and they were like endgame. Joint bank accounts, joint apartment. The aunties in the neighborhood would look at their relationship and say, now where can I get something like that? One year she went home with him for Thanksgiving. Big family event. Uncles and aunts and grandparents. Right after prayer, his grandfather pulled out his checkbook and gave his grandson an ultimatum. $10,000 to kick that black piece of trash to the curb, or hit the curb with her. She knocked on my door half an hour later. He took the money, he took the apartment, and left her with nothing but her own tears. Can you believe she still calls him? Still cries over him? White people are a trap. She still hasn't found her way out.
My mother says that the name Jonas comes from Jonah, like the Bible story, belly of the whale, and all that. She says it represents faith and that I should do the same. And I love my mom, I really do. But that woman doesn't have any idea what she's talking about. I mean, have faith. That's what you tell the 4-year-olds at Sunday school. It doesn't work in the real world. Out here, it's action and reaction, cause and effect. Sometimes you don't even know what you did to cause an effect, but things don't just happen. There's always a reason, always something tangible, like a monster underneath your bed or in the bed beside you. That's what I have to tell myself, okay? To stay alive. I have to believe that there's a reason that somehow I deserve it, or I'm going to end up seeing red again. It's like this switch is flipped in my brain, and The colors and dimensions of everything I see fade away. The world is silent and gray for about 3 milliseconds before everything is flooded with crimson. I lose control of my hands and my lips, and I just want to scream and cry and beat the world bloody. The worst part is, it hurts me more than it could ever hurt anybody else. I vowed to keep it under control, to just have faith, but my roommate called me a nigger yesterday. What am I supposed to do with that?
My name is Curtis. It's nice to meet you, I guess. I'm sorry if this feels stupid. I promise the feeling is mutual. My mom's has me going to every therapist she can think of. She thinks it'll make me feel better. Like talking my feelings out with a stranger could ever make me feel better. And I keep telling her I'm fine. You know, Black people don't even do therapy, but truth is I'm not fine. I can't really even say that out loud unless I'm sitting in front of one of you. Obviously, my mom's already knows, otherwise I wouldn't be here in the first place. Thanks, Mom, just in case you're listening through the door. It's just, it all happened so fast. You know, like 1 second we're walking home from practice and next there are sirens everywhere. It could have been me. Hell, it should have been me, but Marcus, he was trying to talk the officer down, said we weren't bothering nobody, which we weren't, by the way. There wasn't anybody even out there to bother. So what are you doing in this neighborhood then? We live here. He asked for some ID, so Marcus reached for his wallet, and before I knew it, his blood was on my jersey. It was a trap. The same trap that's been piling up Black bodies for years. It's like as soon as they see you, they don't see you or your humanity. All they see is red, and they want to spill it. I had to tell Coach the next day, and he hugged me. He made me feel safe. But when I was leaving the locker room, I heard him saying, at least the cops got to him before the gangs did. We're lucky we didn't lose them both.
You might be wondering, Monica, how did you end up with Brandon then, after all that? To be honest, I'm wondering the same thing myself. It happened very fast. Before I knew it, it was 6 months, then 9, then a year. That was yesterday, the anniversary. He came to my house, planned a whole picnic on the porch, sandwiches, strawberries, candles, white people shit. It was cute though, to have someone put that type of effort into making you smile. We sat out there for hours. We talked, we laughed. And he told me he loved me. Then I kind of slammed the door in his face. I got scared, okay? It's just, there's so many horror stories of Black girls trusting white men, and I don't want to end up crying by myself on Thanksgiving. My life is important, My life matters. I'm not some plaything that you use to look progressive on Instagram. I'm not here to give you your taste of urban lifestyle. And I know it's been a year and I know I should know him by now, but it's so easy to get screwed over by anyone, and the white boy ratio is just that much higher. They tell you they love you, but you'll always be nothing but an experiment to them. That goes for you guys who don't date Black women too. When you fight, they won't fight with you, they'll fight against you. Tell you that you're overthinking your problems and that you should see things from a different point of view. But the part that sucks is that I don't feel any of that. Brandon makes me feel safe. And that's the worst feeling of all. He makes me think that I can go out on the street and be welcome there. He makes me feel like I can fit in with his friends. He makes me feel like we're not any different. And that's how you get shot.
I'd like to rip his beady little eyes out of his flaky little skin. But that won't do me any good. I'd just be playing into his game, and I know that. I know he just wanted a rise out of me. The thing I can't fathom is why. Why is that word so entertaining to white folk? Why is it funny to watch a Black man snap? It's like some sort of fetish to watch me under a microscope as the steam blows out of my ears. And this guy, he's always been nice to me. Yeah, we have our differences because no one should eat that much mayonnaise, but we were friends, like good friends, like weekly movie night type friends. I promised my mother that I would always seek out the good in people, no matter what. She taught me never to judge, lest we be judged in the end. And I'm not judging. I'm not. But I'm starting to believe some people might not have good in them. It's so easy to get fucked over, especially when you're sticking to the bright side. So yeah, maybe they're all racist, at least a little bit. Maybe the monster has been in front of me the whole time. It makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, I'm black, point blank, period. I'm going to leave here, I'm going to take a shower and try to scrub away all the trauma, and I'm still going to be black. This isn't a conversation I get to walk away from. That's something that white folk will never understand, and people fear what they don't understand. People kill what they don't understand. Looking for the good in some people could land you in a grave. Why take that chance, right?
Am I like a bad black person? Does that exist? Like, is there some sort of ranking? Because if there is, I don't think I'd land very high. I'm still on the football team. I'm the star of the football team. That used to be Marcus's spot. And after everything I heard coach say, I came back the next day. And the day after that, and the one after that. Like, does that make me a coon? Because, well, look, here's the thing. My future is riding on football. I mean, you see how black boys die in these streets every day. I want to make it. I want to make my mama proud and do something that we can rely on. Racism is snaked through every single avenue of life. A degree doesn't mean shit for a black man. They don't ask you for your doctorate when there's a gun aimed at your chest. But when that chest has a jersey on it, a professional one, it comes with a guaranteed check. It comes with protection. There's no Saturday tailgate if there aren't any players. But I'm sitting here stressing about my future when my best friend's future bled out on the street. Does that make me a bad black person? Does that make me a bad friend? His parents organized a week of vigils and protests, and I didn't go. A week full of opportunities to rep Marcus, and I didn't go once. While they were marching, I was breaking tackles. I was doing drills while they were lighting candles. Football was the only way I could get through it, clear my head, figure it out. I didn't even make the funeral. I showed up later, like sweaty and out of breath, just to stare at his tombstone. A beautiful black body reduced to nothing but carvings in old marble, all because some cop got bored and trigger happy one night. It should have been me. I just kept hearing that sentence over and over again. It should have been me. I had to leave after 10 minutes. I ran my ass all the way back to the field, up and down again, end zone to end zone. It should have been me. I collapsed on the field, which is better than I can say for Marcus.
I think the thing that gets me is the guilt. I'm guilty because of what I did to Brandon. I'm guilty for even dating him in the first place. I feel guilty for thinking that Brandon will eventually hurt me. And then I feel guilty for feeling guilty. Yeah, I know. Sometimes I feel like an asterisk in the Black community. Like my melanin doesn't really count while I'm walking arm in arm with a white boy. But on our anniversary, I realized something. The guilt stops here. There is no time for isolating yourself or to fear your own skin. This is a time to organize and to celebrate your place on the planet. Black is beautiful on every single body, and joy shines bright on those Black bodies. That's what you gotta chase. Unadulterated, unbridled African American joy. This country was designed to crack the backs of those it was built upon. They don't want to see smiling Black faces, not now and not ever. They want us seeing red, so caught up in our perpetual cycle of anger that we suffocate ourselves. So you know what? It's okay not to trust people. Be they white, blue, or purple, it's okay to fall in love. And it's okay to be scared. But you gotta trust yourself. That's the secret that I keep from myself all this time. If you don't trust anyone, trust yourself. It's the only way to win.
I miss him, man. I really do. And that's why I got to push harder, right? Like, not only for myself, but for Marcus. He was special. We both are. Hell, we all are. I can make a wave where some others could only make ripples. That's a blessing. I want to make this world a place that Marcus would have been proud of, a place where every neighborhood is nice, so there's no room for suspicion, a place where my people shine. The past won't be forgotten, but rather turned into fuel for the weary and hope for the hopeless. I don't want to be hopeless no more. I want so many chapters in my autobiography that it takes years just to write it. It should have been me that day. But because it wasn't, I get the chance to think bigger and do better. And when I see Marcus again, I hope I made him proud. Thanks again, Mom, for making me do this. I think it's going to work this time.
My roommate was a rock. I needed him to help me feel like I had a handle on things. And maybe I was always a project to him, and maybe I wasn't. It's clear to me now that I don't need a crutch to be human. I don't need an assist from the white man, and I don't need to stand on anybody's shoulders. Life is about finding partners, not projects. I am more than enough, and I am more than capable of finding people who believe that. So that if I ever lose it again, I feel validated and not ridiculed. My life matters regardless of how he perceives me, and sometimes regardless of how I perceive myself. Whether you see me as the angry kid or Saint Jonah, I'm worth it either way. And I always will be. Maybe that's faith. I'm not saying my mother was right, but Black women are often wrong. I guess it's time I start seeking out the good in myself. I'm not a bad person, after all. The world isn't stacked with villains and bad apples. It's stacked with humans. And I deserve to be treated like one. We all do.
Thanks, y'all. Our next piece is You're My Last Little Black Girl by You're My Last Little Girl, May Mobley by Yvette Hayliger. Ujamaa will be played by myself, and stage directions will be read by Fafa.
Setting: a church basement, recreation center, or other meeting place. Literature, coffee, and cookies are on the table. A Black woman in her early 60s sits in a folding chair. She's at a gathering much like Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. A professional in her field, she wears slacks, pumps, a blouse, a blazer accented with African fabric, and appropriate jewelry. Her handbag is next to her on the floor. Her first name is printed on a name tag.
Who, me? I'd rather not. I'm happy to just listen, if that's okay. Sure.
She takes a last sip of her coffee, rises, puts her plate of cookies on her seat, and faces the assembly.
Hello, my name is Ujamaa. Oh, hello? What was that? That's right, Ujamaa, like one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. I am a former employee of a PWI, a predominantly white institution. I have been in recovery for almost a year. Let's see, where to start? Well, by the time I graduated from high school in the 70s, the way had been paved for me to have a dream, to cast my vote unimpeded, and to ride the second wave of feminism, which included women of color. I believed I would achieve anything if I got my education, worked hard, and played by the rules. We had our own holiday, Kwanzaa, and oh yeah, Black was beautiful. Fast forward 40 years, I reluctantly walked into a psychiatric's office to determine if I should take medication for depression. You see, I was diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder with anxious distress, currently mild, and panic disorder. I had been seeing therapists on and off over the years, but this was the first time I had been to a psychiatrist. It was explained to me that the reason was because psychiatrists could prescribe medication and therapists can't. I asked to be referred to a black psychiatrist, but there were none. I couldn't believe I had to bring yet another white mental health professional up to speed. The doctor got right down to business, asking, "So what brings you here?" The truth is, it was a lot of things that happened over time, but I summed it up in one sentence. There is nothing beautiful about being black in America. I told her that aside from the blessing of family and the measure of success I had created by myself, pulling myself up by my own bootstraps, my life had been a series of disappointments in response to obstacles both visible and invisible. I told her that for a long time I thought it was my fault, that I wasn't good enough, didn't jump high enough or run fast enough. She said, "That's interesting. Tell me more about that." So I told her about one of my many incidents that happened at the predominantly white institution where I'd worked. I had been appointed project manager for an event that would bring greater visibility to the institution, furthering its good works in the black and brown communities who mission it duly honored to be a part of. And because there was no clear path for advancement, I secretly hoped that more responsibility might portend a promotion with more pay and better benefits. Despite the event being a few short months away, I was confident that with a strong team in place, the event would be successful. I asked for volunteers from among my coworkers and ended up with a teammate of all white women and me. Warning lights started flashing in my amygdala. Danger, danger, but I ignored them, thinking, we're all professionals here. It'll be fine. I looked forward to working with my team, and things got off to a great start. We each volunteers to take on various tasks central to the success of the project. I thought it went without saying that as a project manager, I was the bottom line. But as the project got underway, things started happening that made me wish I had made it plain who the bottom line was. Me. For example, in preparation for our meetings, I would send out the agenda with a request for progress reports. The team members never seemed to be prepared to report on the tasks they themselves had voluntarily taken on. Instead, they found a way to pivot, asking me about the task that I was working on, how it was going, if they could help me by taking it off my hands. More than once, I had to thank them for their concern and assure them that I knew what I was doing and could handle it. If I proposed an idea, it was dismissed, but later the same idea would be reintroduced as if they had thought of it. Members of the team often talked amongst themselves, making decisions without consulting me, and by not copying me on emails, they withheld critical information from me. I was on a need-to-know basis, and I was the project manager. It was clear that my team A had no intention of ever reporting to me, B did not know how to take direction from a black woman, and C didn't know how not to be the boss. All of this made me feel like I was not trusted to do my job. I took my concerns to the higher ups, thinking I would get their support because, well, they're the ones that had appointed me the project manager. I thought they might, I don't know, maybe give guidance to my team on how to share leadership at the organization. That would have been helpful, but instead, I was blamed for bringing up my concerns. I was accused of being brazen, impolite, out of line. I found myself getting more and more upset because I felt I was not being heard. I knew better than to raise my voice, though. The last thing I wanted was to be labeled as an angry black woman. I had seen this movie play out on my previous PWI, but had stayed quiet. This time, because of the awareness of bias raised by the Black Lives Matter movement, I somehow summoned the courage to suggest that perhaps the reason for their treatment of me may be because I am black. Why did I go and say that? They were beyond insulted, accused me of being paranoid. After all, I had been given the project manager position, hadn't I? Instead of seeking to understand the harm that they had done to me, my coworkers went on the offensive, protecting and comforting each other. White women shedding their white tears saying I was being unfair and loudly rejecting the idea that racial bias might just be a part of the organizational culture. I was bewildered, unable to wrap my head around how their bad behavior and my disrespect was my fault. I was effectively put in my place again. I think that's when I first realized it was time to go, but I couldn't. I didn't have an exit plan in place. I vowed to stay on until I could figure out that piece, but it was hard to put an exit plan together under such duress. I was anxious and started second guessing myself. I had panic attacks. I overate at lunch and often needed to stop for a drink. a Bloody Mary after work to decompress before heading home. I was so stressed out that once I got home, I found I had little patience for my family, snapping at my spouse and kids for things I wouldn't have before. Despite what was happening to me somehow through God's grace, I kept my eye on the prize. I was buoyed by the greater good that would be done for the community that the institution was serving, a community I identified with. I know I sound like a martyr, but I was determined to see the project through to completion, and I did. The event was a huge success. Members of the community even said so, thanking me personally, and more importantly, we raised a lot of money for the services. But you would not have known it from the lackluster response of the higher-ups who were acting like it was no big deal. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. I quit, and that is when my recovery began. It is only now I have come to understand that my former PWI chose to uphold and protect the existing power structure over protecting me. It is only now I have come to understand that my inability to achieve whatever I had hoped to achieve in this lifetime by this age wasn't all my fault. It is only now I have come to understand that everything that happens in our country, from the cradle to the grave, supports and sustains institutionalized racism. It is only now I have come to understand that racism has an impact on mental health of Black people in this country, no matter how many firsts we have to achieve or how much progress we have made. It is only now I have come to understand that it's not always big, dramatic events like lynching or police killing unarmed Black people. No, it's a lot of little things that happen almost daily and add up over time, over generations even. Things that happen to your mother and your mother's mother and your mother's mother's mother are all passed down to you. And one day, you're in your 60s, traumatized in a psychiatric office discussing dosage. You're my last little girl, May Mobley. Viola Davis said that in The Help. What she meant was, you're my last little white girl. I am kicking the habit of working for raising up and sustaining these May Mobleys, these predominantly white businesses, organizations, and institutions. I'm submitting applications to Black-owned businesses now. My name, Ujma, has come alive for me to build and maintain our own stories, shops, and other businesses, and to profit from them together. And oh yeah, I am making Black beautiful again. Through education about the disease of racism, I now have the language to talk about what I have experienced, to name it, to call it out.
She removes a box of tissues with the words "white tears" written on it from her handbag.
Now it's your turn, white folks. It works if you work it. So work it, because America is worth it. Our final piece is Glitter Bracelets by Nay Harris. Pixie will be played by Jasmine, Angela will be played by myself, and Ray will be played by Phoenix. Stage directions will be read by Miyako.
Close your eyes.
Why?
Just close them, please.
Angela closes her eyes.
Promise me that when I say you can open your eyes again, that you'll keep your hands at your side. You won't touch me until I say it's okay, especially not my arms. Okay? Promise me.
I promise.
Pixie takes a deep breath and moves her arms in front of her, her palms a few inches from her stomach. Time stops and Angela freezes. Ray pops up on the other side of Pixie's bed.
You don't want to do this, so don't.
Please go away.
She doesn't need to know about us. But if you're really going through with this, then I should be here to support you when she freaks out.
She won't.
She will.
No, she won't.
How do you know? It's happened before.
Doesn't mean it'll happen now.
Every time you let someone in, let them see you, they panic. There was June, then Nova, then Christian, then Stacy, then Violet, and then...
It's just because they worry about me. I'm always the cause of concern.
Then they're disgusted.
Blood makes a lot of people queasy, so what?
And then they leave you. They always leave. Except me. You'll always have me. You're Ray.
Ray strokes her shoulders and upper arms comfortingly, and Pixie almost gives in. Almost. Pixie leaps off of Angela's lap, putting some distance between her and Ray.
No, Angela's different.
How so? Is she not also flesh, blood, and bone, with a strong heart and brilliant mind riddled with insecurities?
Yeah, but she's amazing.
And so are you. But does she deserve you? You look like you need a hug. Hug.
No, thank you. I I don't know about deserving, but I want her to have me anyway, if she'll have me.
Then what? When you shed bare and she sees you, really sees that you're just sugar wrapped in scar tissue and that your trauma is much too sweet for her palate, what then?
Then I'll water myself down and dissolve.
Doubt she'll thank you for your sacrifice.
I'm glad to do it, even if it's fucking terrifying.
She slowly pulls the glove by each fingertip and slides off the first glove, placing it on the bed. She repeats these movements with the second glove. It must be slow. Each centimeter the glove moves down her arm should feel like half an eternity to the audience, for she is reluctantly shedding her second skin, her protection. She strokes Angela's cheek and straddles her lap once again.
You're sure.
Absolutely.
Well, you know where to find me. And remember, I'm always here when you need me.
Ray walks back over to the bed and disappears. Pixie kisses Angela and time flows once again. She places her arms in her lap and takes another deep breath, now bare.
Okay, you can open your eyes.
Thank you all so much. That is it for our formal show. We are going to take a brief break and then come back for our community conversation with Nay Harris. Hello, y'all. We are back, and I am here with Nay Harris for our community conversation. Hey, Nay, how are you today?
Greetings. I'm doing all right. I took a nap and ate a grilled cheese, so we are living life to the fullest right now. And how have you been?
Period. Period, as you should. I am good. I really need some dinner, and that's what I'm going to do right after this, but I'm super happy to be here.
Valid.
Um, Before we jump into our conversation, I'm just gonna read a bit of Nay's bio. So Nay Harris, they them, is an NTI and advanced playwriting alum of the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center. They're a multi-hyphenated writer artist with an affinity for gallows humor. Nay alleviates stigmas regarding mental illness slash self-harm within Black communities, increases representation of Black, queer slash non-binary love slash joy, and advocates for sex workers' safety slash sex work decriminalization. Nay is a Miranda Family Fellowship and NYU Graduate Musical Theater Writing Program alum, as well as a finalist for NBT's I Am Soul Playwriting Residency 2022. They've completed BRTW's Revolution Now 2022 Development Workshop and the 2021 to 2022 Incubator Playwrights Group. They recently completed Prospect Beater's MT Lab and ATG's BIPOC Play Lab, and they're currently a part of Musical Theater Factory's third Makers cohort. For leisure, they enjoy horror films and stargazing, as you should with all these credits, as you definitely should. Is there anything you want to add to this introduction of yourself?
Honestly, I feel like that pretty much sums it. It's always so strange, like reading or hearing a bio, because I'm like, oh, right, that is a thing that happened or that I did. Cool.
And
Thank you.
like, yeah, of course, and give me space for that, because this is sick. Like, you did that. Let's just jump right in. So, my first question is for those who aren't familiar with the work, you just did an excerpt of Glitter Bracelets, but can you tell us a bit about Glitter Bracelets itself? What was the writing process like for you? And particularly, how was that experience as a Revolution Now cohort member? Because I know you did that with VRTW.
That's a good question. Well, I started working on glitter bracelets in like 2017 after graduating. Undergrad was a time and a half. Like everyone knows that. Kudos to anyone who has done any sort of education ever, because life is a trip and a half. But feel like my very first play that I wrote, like for my senior thesis, was called Wounded Skies. And it was on a similar vein in terms of Black femmes dating who also both self-harmed, but it took place in high school. And so after graduation, we were still a little all over the place. But I was very much thinking a whole lot about dating and how difficult that is in its many facets and forms. Um, like not just as a Black queer person, but also very much so with the idea of like masking and mental health. Because I feel like I used to be very insecure about like my scars for a very long time. Because it wasn't even necessarily a thing where I can mask and be like, no, I'm completely fine. Because then people look at my arms and be like, are you sure? And I'm like, that's irrelevant. It was definitely a process. And I feel like the original piece that I was working on outside of college, like Ray wasn't a presence. It was really just Angela, Gina, and Pixie in the piece. So I feel like what really came into play, thankfully, with BRTW and working with like Hede, shout out to Hede, she's amazing, was very much thinking about words like coping mechanisms and sort of like the many faces that they can have. And they're serving not just as a means of sort of a self-preservation, but also as a source of protection in and of itself. And I feel like that's a big part of like where Ray came in, because it was initially that Ray was just sort of going to be like this spirit or representation for Pixie, since Pixie was like the only character in the piece that is really come to some sort of grips or terms with her like mental health and her sort of dependence on razors. Whereas like Gina like smokes cigarettes and like Angela also has trichotillomania, and very much them sort of keeping that as a distance or as sort of like a scale of sorts, where people are like, oh, cigarettes or sex or X, Y, and Z is not as bad as something like self-harming or anything else of that nature. So it's really just a matter of the ways that we attempt to cope or the ways that we attempt to comfort or lie to ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And so working with BRTW, I was able to really expand upon that a little bit more, especially in thinking about like Gina's relationship to Pixie as well, and also like Gina's relationship to Ray, and also Angela's relationship to Ray as well, and sort of what that looks like to see Ray sort of moving throughout the piece into like each of like these people's lives throughout, and like what that can look like. So yeah, that was very much a time and a half of very much so just the idea of dating in general, but then also anniversaries and like what does that actually mean in and of itself, especially if like you have been like suicidal for like a very long period of time and you didn't think that you would make it to like a certain age or like a certain potential like life marker, like graduating from college or renting your first apartment or XYZ. And so like what does it really mean in an attempt to really one start seriously dating or being like, yes, I would like to stick around long enough to have some sort of relationship, to how do we get to, oh, our first week, to 6 months, to a year and some change, and like what does it look like to actually start to imagine your life and like existing as being possible, as opposed to sort of just existing on a minute by minute basis where you're actually planning ahead and that you believe in these plans. So, and so I feel like that was a big part of the idea of anniversaries and how stressful they can be also. And I feel like, especially for me, because like spawning days and New Year's are always like really difficult for me because I feel like they are very large markers. And I feel like even now, like whenever each one passes, like I just turned 28 last year, and that is still very strange to wrap my head around. Yeah, because living past 12, we were like, that's not going to be a thing. And here we are. And I'm like, I guess so. Here we are. And so very much so this, the awkwardness of in-betweens of very much so, especially since I've been thinking a lot about liminal spaces as well, which is a large part of like where like Ray's presence sort of comes in, and just sort of this half and half of attempting to be present and a part of like this realm as we like supposedly know and understand it, but also having metaphorically one foot in the grave or your brain in like another space that
Mm,
where time does not exist or work the same way, and very much trying to keep a handle or find some sort of balance between all of these spaces and like what it actually means to be present with oneself or within community as well.
yeah.
Yes. So yes, that was a whole lot of experimentation with glitter bracelets.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much. And that liminal space is so interesting for you to mention, and like definitely felt um in reading it. It's very interesting that the way that Ray's character exists now wasn't like in the initial oh my goodness, excuse me. Mercury must be in retrograde or something because I am tripping. But
Words are words.
words are hard. Words are difficult. Um
Mhm.
but what I was trying to get at is Ray's character like plays such a central role for me in it. So it's interesting to see that they weren't there from jump, that they were like a part of the original idea. Um, but wonderful. Yeah, I guess my next question is, all this stuff is heavy. Especially dealing with subject matters that may or may not like hit home, whether you're um, struggling with these situations that you're writing about, or whether the people you know are struggling with these situations that you're writing about. So, what practices do you use to kind of take care of your own mental health while you were developing Glitter Bracelets one, but also just like developing any writing that's kind of heavier?
Okay, so efforts to take care of oneself was not really made until a few years ago, to
Real
be
and
honest.
raw.
Like, yeah, no,
Real.
it was
Yeah.
that's right. We're get it on the page, see what happens. Cool. Um, so I feel like at least therapy since I started therapy in like 2015, 2016. So I feel
Mm,
like that helped at least a bit in terms of compartmentalizing a little bit more and in
yeah.
terms of because emotions are a lot. Like I think about earlier years of being like in the psychiatric industrial complex is some bullshit
Mm,
and needs a whole lot of restructuring. But very much so looking back on several points in my life and being like, oh my gosh, that was a time that we were not on medication and most likely should have been on medication.
mm,
Um, and sort of having those moments, but also because the fact that was also something that I really started grappling with for a long period of time was like, what does it actually mean to be on medication? And is like accepting meds or even therapy some sort of admission of failure in some way,
mm,
shape, or form, or that you're not able to quote unquote keep everything together.
mm,
um, and I feel like that's also like a big thing for because I feel like it's only been like the last few years that a lot of like the women and femmes in my life have sort of been a bit more transparent. We've been having deeper conversations about our
mm,
own like mental health and like traumas. And I feel like that also plays a role in a sense because for a very at least a decade, I very much thought that I was the only Black person who was hurting themselves in
mm,
some way, shape, or form. And so as a result, I very much felt like I was failing across the board because it was like I'm not doing anything correctly or everyone else does not seem to be struggling to this extent. So
yeah.
obviously I'm something is wrong.
Mm,
um, and it's like there's a whole lot wrong, but I feel like very it's eye opening, but it's also heartbreaking in some way, shape, or form of really getting glimpses into other people's lives and like the ways that they have been trying to survive.
yeah.
And even like I used to be a very big people pleaser and I used to try to take care of people. Like everyone in like high school and college used to call me like Mama Nay because I was always like, did
Mm,
you do your homework? Did you eat? Are you
mm,
hydrated?
yeah.
So very much attempting to be everyone else's caretaker so that they felt supported in some way, shape, or form.
Mm,
So that was also like another thing of very much realizing that you can't save people or that you can't help people or live their pain or trauma for them. And I feel like
mm.
that was always like the
Wow.
hardest thing for me of being like, oh, I can't actually help people to the extent that I would like to.
Mm,
But also realizing that it's not your place, that you have your own life to live or that you should be attempting to live. And that for me, caretaking was also a huge means of deflecting as
mhm,
well. And to like prolong taking care of myself because I was like, other people are more important. But the whole saying of you cannot pour from an empty cup is very, very relevant and very truthful. And I feel like that is something that I have been very stubbornly accepting and internalizing the last
yeah,
few years.
yeah. Mm, that was beautiful. That was a word also, like, you cannot live other people's suffering for them. Like, let's just sit in that, because that is a word. That is a word. Wow. Hmm. I guess kind of shifting gears. Um, what are you working on? Besides glitter bracelets, do you have anything that's in the works or has been up that you want to kind of gear people
Yeah,
towards?
there's been a number of things going on. But no, the piece that I was working on with National Black Theater is this very large, I call it a farcical nightmare of a play called Scratch Record. And it was
Mm,
basically about like this black femme couple outside of college who started living together. And it was like this whole thing about this podcast or like this interview that they did for like a college project
hmm.
that started getting like really intense and like trauma heavy more so than anything. And so it was very much under the understanding for like both characters, like Spawn and Kayla, are their names, that it would just be like this intimate couples moment for them as opposed to something that would be like broadcasted or shared. And then Kayla does share it and becomes like a podcast personality. And very much
Wow.
so, this idea of trauma and really much the idea of stories and who gets to sort of claim any sort of piece of you or of your story just because you share it with them,
Wow.
and like vice versa.
Hmm.
And so it was really just, as I've been like working on it, I was thinking a lot about inner children as well, and very much so the ways that we sort of ignore or sacrifice them, especially as we get older, as an attempt to sort of integrate into society, whether it be attempting to pretend that we are like normal and can actually be worthy of community, though we are all worthy of community since we are beings, but like that is
Hmm.
um a time and a half, but very much so. And Lord, through my workshop with MBT and also with America Theater Group's BIPOC Play Lab, one of my mentors, Pandora, was like, "You can write more than one play," and I was like, "That makes a lot of sense when you say that." So it was like almost like 200 something pages, which honestly was like not that much considering how long my plays always end up starting off initially. So we've finally broken it down, and it's the Scratch Record series. So I'm currently on the fourth or fifth draft of Side A, which is very much the prequel to this moment, which is very much the budding and exploration of like Kayla and Spawn's relationship in college and how it sort of grows from there.
Hmm.
And also a little bit from personal experience as well, because I realized that it was not just my being self-conscious about mental health that made dating and existing difficult in general, but
Hmm.
also realized that I am also autistic as fuck. And I was like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So very much so coming about it from like that lens as well, especially in regards to what it means to have an inner child and like what that really can look like as a personification on like in one's mind or on a stage, and very much sort of having these like actual children that look so abstract in some way, shape, or form that follow their older selves around and sort of act as a sounding board, but also a means of comfort. But then later on, as the piece evolves, also becoming targets of sorts, and sort of how we often project and we punish ourselves in some way, shape, or form for not being normal, quote unquote, or
Hmm.
for not being able to do this or that and the third. And very much so this idea that because we are the only one can take our temper or anger or violence, and that we're somehow the most deserving of it because we don't want to hurt other people, even though we consistently disregard the fact that we are also people. And very much what it just means to attempt to sort of discover or really accept one's humanity while also realizing that you also are deserving of kindness as well. And that all of the different parts of you that have kept you alive, especially inner children as well, that they have worked so hard and that they also deserve to be taken care of on some as well, and being received with patience because they have dealt with all of this in tandem with you. And I feel like that is something that I have been struggling with for a very long time, of very much coming to grips. And it's been a long time of very much apologizing to Lil Nay for a lot because there's a lot going on, and very much realizing that it was too much for one person, especially a child, to have to attempt to carry, and really attempting to not just sort of view Lil Nay as a separation of myself to give kindness to, but very much as an extension of myself in order to very much work on getting better at being kinder to myself, which is a lot easier said than done. And so it's, it's very much time and a half about dating, but also existing as autistic, but also being very much an emo kid at heart as well.
Real.
Because it never dies. You never get over it, honestly. And so grappling with those bits and pieces. So I feel like this has also been, for me, has been a very large step in terms of not masking, because I've realized that I do mask a lot when I write, and I feel like that is a large part of why so many of my pieces don't feel quote unquote complete. Not that a piece of theater ever really feels complete, but how it always feels like there is something missing, and I feel like it's because I've always been holding back in some way, shape, or form. And I consistently self-edit and self-criticize because I'm like, this is not acceptable. This has to be a perfect first draft, even though there's no such thing as a perfect first draft. So I'm like, I cannot show people if it does not look okay or be understood. And I feel like a lot of my pieces, I've been recognizing there's a lot of repetition in them, a lot. And it's like, you just said that. I'm like, yes, but I have to make sure people get it. They have to understand. And so very much attempting to just get words on the page or on a computer screen without being overly critical, and very much hurting my own feelings because I feel like that helps nobody. I'm trying to get better at that. Very much so just allowing pieces to exist and the words to just come, because I feel like for a very long time I very much used these worlds and plays in my slow jello as sort of a sounding board or a means to communicate my own issues and fears that I was not actually physically or like verbally expressing myself. And I've been realizing that that is very much a huge disservice to these characters and these worlds, because I'm not actually their creator, I'm their transcriber. And that I'm very much blessed to be able to be allowed into seeing these snippets of these worlds that they allow me to witness and then write down, as opposed to very much arrogantly on some way making assumptions or basically making them microphones for myself, and actually getting better at communicating and expressing like myself, as opposed to through my plays completely. And so like that also in and of itself has been a challenge, but it's also been very enlightening as well. And it feels like there's a lot more breathing room, I feel like, which is very necessary. And I feel like I'm personally very proud of that level of growth, because I feel like I don't really say it enough that I am. So we are trying to put that out into the ether a little bit more. But yes, that is what we have been working on currently. Both plays are on the New Play Exchange. Pretty sure it's just under Nay Harris. So if you want to read weird existential shit, by all means, go forth, be great.
And it will definitely be available in the description of this video alongside the link to Glitter Bracelets, which is out now on Spotify, and everybody should go listen to it.
Honestly, though, listen to it, it's everything.
It's so
It's so
great. You can listen to it on your commute. You can listen to it while you do other things, while you clean, anything. Out now. But, Nay, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and just echoing all of the growth and the amazingness that you have allowed us to be a part of and to witness and experience with you in this time, but also in your work. Um, this level of vulnerability, and I know you're all about destigmatization, but still, like, even getting up and being here in this space can be difficult. It can be fucking hard. That's why we have a whole month about mental health awareness. So yeah, just thank you. Thank all of my wonderful actors who are still in the chat. Um, we're gonna sign off because that's all we have time for, but I hope all of y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And thank you so much again for your time, Nay.
Thank you so much for having me. And all of you were amazing. I loved all of the pieces. So.